Now Bacon goes on to give us a list of such examples of kings and their friends, some pairs of very famous friends. Okay, let's take a look at them. Sylla, when he commanded Rome, raised Pompey, after surnamed the Great, to that height that Pompey wanted himself for Sylla's overmatch. For when he had carried the consulship for Lepidus, for a friend of his, against the pursuit of Sylla, and that Sylla did a little resent thereat, and began to speak, Pompey turned upon him again, and in effect bade him be quiet, for that more men adored the sun rising than the sun setting. Okay, so the first pair he talks about is Sylla and Pompey. Now this Sylla is actually a reference to Cornelius Sylla, or in some books you also find it spelled as Sulla, Sulla. Okay, so Cornelius Sylla, he was a champion of the senatorial party during the Roman Revolution, and he became the master of Rome, the city of Rome, in 81 BC. He was a very powerful person, and when he was the ruler of Rome, he raised Pompey. Pompey was a man of ordinary birth. He raised him because he considered Pompey his friend. He gave him the title Pompey the Great, and he established and made it known to everybody that Pompey is my friend. He is to be treated with respect. Hereafter he is to be known as Pompey the Great. And then what happened later? This very same Pompey became a threat to Sylla. That Pompey wanted himself for Sylla's overmatch. So after some time, Pompey prided himself. He began to think that he is equal to or even better than Sylla. Overmatch here means better. Considering himself better. For when he had carried the consulship for Lepidus, for a friend of his. So later on, when there came up a situation where they had to choose a consul, when this situation came up, Pompey supported the candidature of this person called Lepidus, whereas Sylla was not fond of Lepidus. And this very same Pompey, who was raised to greatness from a mere nobody, he stood against Sylla and supported Lepidus. And he also told, he was so arrogant by that time, and Sylla had kind of lost his power. Maybe he had become old, he had lost his kind of influence over others, and so Pompey very ungratefully turned against Sylla, and he told him to keep quiet. And he also said people adored the sun rising than the sun setting. So it's a very rude thing to say. He told Sylla that you better keep quiet here onwards, because you are the setting sun and I am the rising sun. So you better hold your opinion to yourself and listen to what I have to say. Okay, so that was the case of Sylla and Pompey. Now he gives us, so that means that Pompey slowly assumed, and later, what happened later was that he assumed more power than Sylla. Then another pair of friends. With Julius Caesar, Decimus Brutus had obtained that interest, as he set him down in his testament for heir in remainder after his nephew. So Julius Caesar was very fond of this man called Decimus Brutus. Now this Decimus Brutus is not the Marcus Brutus that we see in the play Julius Caesar. This is another person, Decimus Brutus, and Caesar was very fond of him. He considered him a very good friend, and he even set him down in his will that after his nephew, whatever he remains, he will be, this person will he bequeathed it, or Caesar bequeathed some of his wealth and some of his power to Decimus Brutus. So he was that fond of Brutus. And this was the man that had power with him to draw him forth to death. And what happened was, it is this very man of whom Julius Caesar was so fond. This very man led him to his death. For when Caesar would have discharged the Senate in regard of some ill presages, and especially a dream of Calpurnia, this man lifted him gently by the arm out of his chair, telling him he hoped he would not dismiss the Senate till his wife had dreamt a better dream. So here he says, like, if those of you who have read Julius Caesar, the play written by Shakespeare, you would very easily connect to what Bacon says here. Now, Calpurnia, you see the name there? That is the name of Julius Caesar's wife. And it is said that on the day that Julius Caesar was assassinated, that was supposed to be a 15th of March, the Ides of March, and Caesar was supposed to go to the Senate that day, and the senators, including Cassius and Casca and this Brutus and the other Marcus Brutus, all of them had made plans to assassinate this man Caesar. And so they had decided that when Caesar comes to the Senate, they will start a discussion on something that he will definitely not agree upon, and then they'll have a quarrel, and as the result of the quarrel, they would stab him to death. That is what they had planned. And on the very same day, when Caesar woke up in the morning, his wife was very upset, and she told him that she had very, very highly disturbing dreams the previous night, and she, among many other things which I am not going to elaborate, she said that she had seen a statue of Julius Caesar, and it was spouting blood. There were many holes in the statue, and blood was spouting out of those holes, and people were washing, the senators, they were washing their hands in the blood. And so she believed that dream, it was a bad omen. It meant that Caesar was going to be in some sort of a danger, that maybe he is going to be killed, because there were wounds on his body. And so she prevailed upon him not to go to the Senate. And seeing her so worried, Caesar decided to stay back home that day and not to go to the Senate. So he decided to discharge the Senate, maybe to dismiss the Senate for that day, and inform them that he is not coming that day. But then the senators, to make sure that Caesar would come that day, they sent somebody to his house, to the place where Caesar stayed, to bring him, to make sure that he comes to the Senate. And Decimus Brutus, his very close friend, came to him, and Caesar told him, see, I'm not coming today because Calpurnia here is terribly upset, so maybe we'll not have a meeting today, so let's keep it for another day. I'm not coming today. And Decimus Brutus convinced him, saying that you shouldn't stay back home just because your wife had a dream, and it would be very shameful when people come to know that Caesar will come to the Senate only if his wife has a good dream. What does that say about you? That will not create a good impression about you. So it's better that you come. A dream, it's after all a dream. So he convinced Caesar that he is to ignore Calpurnia's dream, and much against the wishes of Calpurnia, Caesar went to the Senate, and what happened later was that he got killed. He was assassinated. Okay, so that is what is mentioned here, how a very good friend, a trusted friend, led Caesar to his downfall. So he lifted him out gently by the arm out of his chair, telling him he hoped he would not dismiss the Senate till his wife had a dream dreamt a better dream. And it seemeth his favour was so great, as Antonius, in a letter which is recited verbatim in one of Cicero's Philippics, calleth him Venefica, witch, as if he had enchanted Caesar. And Bacon also mentions here that Mark Antony, here Antonius is a reference to Mark Antony. Mark Antony, the one who does that very famous speech in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, friends, Romans, countrymen. So it is that person here, Antonius. And this Cicero is Marcus Tullius Cicero, who was a contemporary, and he has written a series of speeches, 14 speeches against Mark Antony after the assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BC. And in one of the speeches, Cicero's speeches together, they are called Philippics. Okay, the 14 speeches, a compilation of 14 speeches, it is called Philippics. So there he quotes the speech of Antonius, which is recited verbatim. Verbatim means not even one word is changed. Word by word it is repeated in Cicero's Philippics. There Mark Antony or Antonius calls Decimus Brutus Venefica or witch, because he had the power to enchant Caesar. Caesar could not disobey when Decimus Brutus asked him to do something. That is why Mark Antony called him Venefica or a witch. So that is another example of how a king was led to his ruin by a trusted friend. Now we go on to the next pair. Augustus raised Agrippa, though of mean birth, to that height, as when he consulted with Maecenas about the marriage of his daughter Julia. Maecenas took the liberty to tell him that he must either marry his daughter to Agrippa or take away his life. There was no third way. He had made him so great. So here the pair mentioned here is Augustus and Agrippa. So Augustus was Julius Caesar's nephew, and he was the first emperor of Rome. So Augustus had a friend called Agrippa. Agrippa again was a man of mean birth, but then Augustus, because of his love for Agrippa, gave him a lot of important positions and raised him to a great height. And later on, when the case of his daughter's marriage came up, when his daughter Julia was of marriageable age, he asked his another friend, Maecenas, what do I do about her marriage? Who do I get her married to? And Maecenas told him, you do not have an option. You have to get the girl married to Agrippa, because Agrippa will not allow anybody else to marry Julia. Because if he marries Julia, that means he will automatically become the heir to the king. So Maecenas gave him a very blunt and a very honest opinion. He said, you only have two options. Either you marry your daughter Julia to Agrippa, or you take away his life, or you do something to get rid of Agrippa. As long as Agrippa is alive, you cannot find another husband for your daughter, because you have elevated him to such glory and such heights and such power that you cannot really go against him anymore. So that is the third pair of friends. With Tiberius Caesar. Now Tiberius Caesar is the second emperor of Rome. Sejanus had ascended to that height, as they two were termed and reckoned as a pair of friends. Now this Sejanus is a character we already came across when we did the essay of ambition. So there, the story of this Sejanus and Tiberius is that Tiberius was a very selfish and a very crooked king, and because he needed the support of a few people, he brought up Sejanus and gave him important positions. And then when Sejanus became very powerful, Tiberius became suspicious that he will be a threat to him. And so he brought in another person in order to cause the downfall of Sejanus. And finally Sejanus was punished. He was killed and his body was thrown down the Germanian stairs without giving any proper burial. That was a great insult to him. His family was killed because Sejanus had plotted against Tiberius. He had started a secret affair with the wife of Tiberius' son, and he killed this son through slow poisoning so that nobody would suspect him. So later, when Tiberius came to know of all this, he got Sejanus killed, and he threw him down the Germanian stairs so that his body may be torn and eaten by the animals. And he was also condemned with damnation memoriae, which is a punishment where all traces of this man would be destroyed, because if his names, if they are inscribed on coins, that would be erased from there. His name would be erased from all official records. So that was a very big punishment those days, very grave punishment, and all his family members, his children, they were all put to death. So that is what happened to Sejanus. And before things turned sour between them, they were considered to be great friends. Tiberius in a letter to him said, you can see a Latin phrase given there which I am not going to read. What it means is, all this as a friend I have stated without keeping back anything. And the whole Senate dedicated an altar to friendship as to a goddess in respect of the great dearness of friendship between the two. So those days, before when they were really great friends, he declared openly that Sejanus was his best and most trusted friend, and the Senate even dedicated an altar to friendship in order to honor the friendship between these two men. But later on, the friendship disintegrated and disappeared. It turned to hatred and suspicion. The like or more was between Septimius Severus and Plautianus, for he forced his eldest son to marry the daughter of Plautianus, and would often maintain Plautianus in doing affronts to his son, and did write also in a letter to the Senate by these words, I love the man so well as I wish he may overlive me. Okay, that is another example, Septimius Severus and Plautianus. So Septimius the king, he was so fond of his friend Plautianus that he forced his eldest son to marry the daughter of Plautianus, and Plautianus often insulted this son of Septimius Severus, and Septimius even supported Plautianus when he insulted his son. So he considered his friend more important than his son. And he also said, I love the man so well, I wish he may overlive me. So I love this man Plautianus so much that I want him to continue living for a long time, even after I am dead. So that was the kind of friendship that was there between those two men. Now, if these princes has been as Trajan or Marcus Aurelius, a man might have thought that this had proceeded of an abundant goodness of nature. But being men so wise, of such strength and severity of mind, and so extreme lovers of themselves, as all these were, it proveth most plainly that they found their own felicity, though as great as ever happened to mortal men, but as an half piece, except they might have a friend to make it entire. And yet, which is more, they were princes that had wives, sons, nephews, and yet all these could not supply the comfort of friendship. So he says, see, if he gives us two names here, you can see that Trajan and Marcus Aurelius, these two kings, they were believed to be very good people with an abundant goodness of nature. They were so loving, so affectionate, so trusting. So if it were people like Trajan or Marcus Aurelius who gave so much of importance to friends, we can understand easily, because they were basically good-natured people. But that was not the case with all these people we mentioned earlier. Tiberius, Augustus, Severus, these were all people who had strength and severity of mind, and they were extreme lovers of themselves, means they thought high of themselves, they were very selfish. In spite of all that, they had all the happiness in the world. Felicity here means intense happiness. They had more happiness than ordinary people had, because they were kings, they had everything they wanted, they could do whatever they want, so they had all happiness. In spite of that, they considered it as a half peace, in the sense they considered that their happiness was incomplete. Except they might have, might here must, it might only means must. So they believed that to make it entire, to make their happiness entire, otherwise it was only half peace. To make this half peace full, they felt that they must have a friend. In spite of all the fortunes, all the power, all the happiness they enjoyed even otherwise, they felt the need of a good friend. And all these kings, he says, they had wives, sons, nephews. So they were not lonely people. They had families to support them. They had wives, they had sons, they had nephews. But in spite of all this, none of these people could supply the comfort of friendship. So nobody else can take the place of a good friend. So that is the point that Bacon tries to prove. Now let's go on to the next paragraph of the essay of friendship. It is not to be forgotten what Comenius observeth of his first master, Duke Charles the Hardy, namely, that he would communicate his secrets with none, and least of all those secrets which troubled him most. Whereupon he goeth on and saith that towards his latter time that closeness did impair and a little perish his understanding. So now he goes on to talk about another person, and he says that Comenius is the name of a French historian born in 1446, and he lived at the time of Duke Charles the Hardy, or Charles the Bold he was called, and he was the last of the great dukes of Burgundy. And about his master, Charles the Bold or Charles the Hardy, Comenius says that Comenius is a historian, as I told you, so he has written about him that he was a very secretive person. He would not reveal any of his feelings to anybody. He did not have any close friends. He kept all his secrets to himself, even the secrets which troubled him the most. And whereupon he goeth on, that is, as he grew older at the latter time, this closeness, here closeness means this refusal to be open or to share his feelings with others, that actually impaired him, and it even perished his understanding, in the sense that it had a bad effect on his health and on his mental health, that is, because he had nobody to share with. He kept everything to himself. He became very suspicious, and he became mentally ill towards the end of his life. So that is what happens if you don't have a good friend to share your feelings with. That is the point that Bacon is trying to make. Surely Comenius might have made the same judgment also if it had pleased him of his second master, Louis the 11th, whose closeness was indeed his tormentor. So Bacon says that this was the same case with Comenius' second master. After Charles the Hardy, we had the next king, Louis the 11th. So Louis, L-O-U-I-S, that is how you would write it in French. That is the same thing that is given here as Louis. So Louis the 11th, he too had the same character, and his closeness was his tormentor. the same closeness, the same lack of trust of other people, that is what led to his downfall, and that quality of his tormented him. Because it is very difficult when you have troubles. It helps so much if you can share it with somebody. But if you're going to keep everything inside and suffer on your own, your life becomes a torment in itself. So that is what happened to the next person too, that is Louis the 11th. The parable of Pythagoras is dark but true. Cor ne edito. Eat not the heart. So Pythagoras, the philosopher, has said, as this is the word that he has, a phrase that he has said, cor ne edito. Cor is the heart. So he has said, eat not the heart, in the sense that keeping things to yourself will eat your heart. You have to share it with somebody, otherwise your sorrows, your passions, your feelings will start eating you from the inside. So that is why Pythagoras said, eat not the heart. So that is exactly what happened to these two men, Charles the Hardy and Louis the 11th. They ate their own heart without revealing their passions or feelings to anybody else, and that led to ill health and mental impairment. Certainly, if a man would give it a hard phrase, those that want friends to open themselves unto are cannibals of their own hearts. So he says that people who do not have friends, who want friends, means who lack friends, they are people who are cannibals of their own hearts. Cannibals, we know that cannibals are people who eat human flesh. So he says that people who do not have good friends to share feelings with, they are actually cannibals of their own hearts. But one thing is most admirable, wherewith I will conclude this first fruit of friendship, which is that it is communicating of a man's self to his friend. That this communicating of a man's self to his friend works two contrary effects. For it redoubleth joys and cutteth griefs in halves. So he says, before I conclude this particular topic, he has been talking to us about the first fruit or the principal fruit of friendship, which is the sharing of emotions. He says, this is the last point I want to make. This particular aspect of friendship, it works two contrary effects. So when you share, when you communicate yourself to a friend, two things happen, two contrary things happen in fact. One, it redoubleth joys. Two, it cutteth griefs in halves. So you do one thing, that is share your heart with your friend, and two outcomes come out of it. What is that? One, your joys increase. Two, your sorrows decrease. So opposing impacts, but both come out of this. So for it redoubleth joys. For there is no man that imparteth his joys to his friends, but he joyeth the more. And no man that imparteth his griefs to his friend, but he grieveth the less. So he says, all men, when they share their joys, what happens is their joy increases. It's true, isn't it? When we share our joy to others, when they also experience their happiness, that we are happy, don't we feel happier? That is why we hold birthday parties, or when you get a promotion in your job, when a baby is born in the family, when there is a marriage. Why do we invite people close to us, or why do we invite good friends? Because it makes you happy to see that they are happy in your happiness, isn't it? It redoubleth joys. And same way, when you impart your griefs, when you share your griefs to your friend, you grieve the less, in the sense when your friend listens to you. Sometimes your friend, when you are crying, your friend may weep along with you. Your friend may hug you, embrace you, tell you it's okay, I am there for you. Let's face this problem together. Don't think you are alone. So what happens when somebody says that to you? Your griefs are cut in half. They are reduced. So that is the greatest benefit of sharing your feelings with others or with your true friends. So that it is in truth of operation upon a man's mind, of like a virtue as the alchemists used to attribute to their stone for man's body, that it worketh all contrary effects, but still to the good and benefit of nature. But yet without praying in aid of alchemists, there is manifest image of this in the ordinary course of nature. For in bodies union strengtheneth and cherisheth any natural action, and on the other side weakeneth and dulleth any violent impression, and even so it is of minds. So he says in alchemy was this practice of using chemicals so that some base materials, the alchemists used to claim that they can change even base materials like bronze into gold. And so he says that when you try to share with your friends, when you try to, he says here, for in bodies union strengtheneth and cherisheth natural action. So here natural action is joy. So natural action, when you share it, it is strengthened and it is cherished. And at the same time, violent impressions like sorrow or grief, it becomes weak or it becomes dull when you share it with others. So this is exactly what happens in the mind too. So such actions, so sharing, it increases joy. The very same sharing dulls grief or sorrow. So in these 2 or 3 paragraphs that we have already read, we saw how Bacon tells us that the principle, the greatest benefit of friendship is that when you share your feelings and sorrows and joys with your friends, it provides immense relief to us. That is what he had been trying to tell us.